My name is Chelsea. I'm 28 years old and I live in Chicago. And 2 weeks before my wedding, I found out my mother didn't just break my heart, she deleted my entire future. I was standing in the middle of a Starbucks at 5 a.m. The air smelled like burnt beans and cleaning spray. My feet were already throbbing inside my sneakers. This was my first shift of the day. After this, I had 8 hours of data entry. After that, I had 6 hours of waitressing at a greasy diner. I had lived this way for 3 years. Every cent I made, every tip I earned went into one place: my wedding fund. I wanted the grand oak manor. I wanted the lace dress. I wanted one day where I didn't feel like a girl who grew up with nothing. The phone in my pocket buzzed. I saw it was the manager from the venue. I smiled, thinking he wanted to talk about the flower arrangements or the seating chart. "Hi, Chelsea," he said. His voice sounded heavy. "We have a problem. The final deposit of $15,000 hasn't cleared. The bank says the account has insufficient funds." I actually laughed. I leaned against the counter and wiped a sweat bead from my forehead. "That's impossible," I told him. "I just checked it last week. There's over $24,000 in there. It's probably just a bank glitch." "I hope so," he said. "But if we don't have the funds by Friday, we have to release the date to the next couple on the waiting list." My heart did a strange, slow roll in my chest. My hands started to shake. I pulled up my banking app right there at the register. I logged in with a thumbprint. I waited for the little circle to spin. The screen loaded. Well, my eyes went to the balance. $0.12, 12 cents. I blinked, thinking my eyes were blurry from lack of sleep. I refreshed the page. The number didn't change. I scrolled down to the transaction history. I saw a series of massive transfers over the last 4 days. All of them were going to an account I recognized. My mother's account. I couldn't breathe. The room felt like it was spinning. A customer asked me for a latte, but I didn't hear them. My face went hot, then cold. My stomach felt like I'd swallowed a bag of ice. They thought I was just a tired bride-to-be. They had no idea I was about to become their worst nightmare. My mother thought she'd won. She thought I'd just cry and move on. She was wrong. I wasn't always the woman who could record her own mother and call the police. At 22, I was just a girl who wanted to believe that family meant safety. I was naive. I believed that mothers were supposed to be the net that catches you when you fall, not the hands that push you down. The shift in our dynamic started 6 years ago. It was the summer after I graduated from college. I was driving home from a late shift internship when a truck blew through a red light. The sound of metal crunching on metal is something you never forget. My car was totaled. I ended up with a broken collarbone, a concussion, and a mountain of medical bills that made my head spin. I was 22 and terrified. My mother, Linda, stepped in immediately. "Don't worry about a thing, honey," she told me while she smoothed my hair in the hospital bed. "I'll handle the insurance. I'll handle the bank. You just focus on getting better." Because I was on so many painkillers and could barely move my arm, I let her. I gave her my login info. I added her name to my secondary emergency savings account so she could pay the hospital directly. I thought it was an act of love. I didn't realize I was handing a thief the keys to my house. The first time I realized something was wrong was only a month later. My grandmother had sent me a $500 check for my graduation. It was supposed to be my moving out money to help with the security deposit. I remember the card specifically. It had a picture of a graduation cap and a handwritten note that said, "For your bright future." I asked my mom if the check had arrived in the mail. She didn't even blink. She kept washing the dishes, her back turned to me. "Oh, that? The mailman must have lost it, Chelsea. Or maybe your grandma forgot to mail it. You know how she gets at her age." I called my grandmother. She sounded confused. "But Chelsea, I see the money left my account 2 weeks ago. Someone signed for it." When I confronted my mom again, her entire face changed. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed. "I had to use it to pay for your physical therapy copay," she snapped. "I've been driving you back and forth for weeks. My gas isn't free. My time isn't free. Why are you being so selfish about a little bit of money?" I felt a cold pit in my stomach. She hadn't asked me. She had just taken it. And then she had lied about it. But because I was still living under her roof and couldn't drive yet, I swallowed my anger. I told myself she was stressed. I told myself I owed her for taking care of me after the accident. "I'm sorry." "Mom," I said, "I didn't mean to be ungrateful." She smiled then. It was a sharp, satisfied smile. "That's my girl. Family has to stick together, right?" That was the pattern. She would take, I would catch her, and then she would make me feel like the villain for noticing. I spent the next 6 years trying to buy her love with my silence. I let her stay on that account because I wanted her to feel included. I wanted her to stop telling my aunts that I was closer to my dad's side of the family. I thought if I shared my life and my money with her, she would finally be the mother I saw in the movies. I was 22, and I was wrong. By the time I turned 25, the borrowing had already reached thousands of dollars, and I was still saying sorry for her crimes. For the next 3 years, my life became a blur of exhaustion. I was working 3 jobs. But I wasn't just working for a wedding. I was working to escape the shadow of my mother's needs. Every time I got ahead, Linda found a way to pull me back. When I turned 25, I decided to do something for myself. I had saved $800 to go on a weekend trip to a spa with my 2 best friends. I needed it. My eyes were bloodshot from double shifts, and my back felt like a coiled spring. 2 days before the trip, I checked my emergency account. It was $400 short. I went to the living room where my mom was watching QVC. "Mom, did you take money for the electric bill?" I asked. She sighed, a long, dramatic sound. "Chelsea, my car needed 2 new tires. I was going to tell you, but you're always so stressed. I didn't want to ruin your mood. Besides, what's a spa day compared to your mother being stranded on the highway?" "Mom, that was my birthday gift to myself," I said. My voice was trembling. "You're 25, she snapped. "Birthdays are for children. I gave birth to you. That's a lot more painful than missing a massage." I canceled the trip. I stayed home and worked an extra shift at the diner instead. A year later, the manipulation got darker. My mom called me at work, crying so hard she could barely speak. She told me the doctor found a suspicious growth, and she needed a private consultation and specialized imaging that her insurance wouldn't cover. She needed $2,000 immediately. I didn't even think. I transferred the money from my wedding savings into the joint account. I spent 2 weeks crying, terrified I was going to lose my mother. I brought her soup. I cleaned her house. A month later, I found a receipt in her coat pocket while doing her laundry. It wasn't from a hospital. It was for a high-end designer handbag and a weekend getaway at a casino in Indiana. "Where is the surgery paperwork, Mom?" I asked, holding the receipt. She didn't even look guilty. She grabbed the receipt from my hand. The doctor said it was benign. I was so relieved I needed to celebrate. I was celebrating my life, Chelsea. Would you rather I be dead? My younger cousin, Sarah, was graduating from college. I wanted to give her $100. I knew how hard it was to start out with nothing. I went to the ATM, but my card was declined. I found out my mom had gone out to dinner with her friends and accidentally used my card because it looked just like hers. She spent $150 on lobster and cocktails for her friends, bragging about how well her daughter was doing. When I told her I couldn't give Sarah a gift now, she rolled her eyes. "Sarah's parents have money. They don't need your crumbs. You're just looking for a reason to be mean to me." This was the one that hurt the most. 6 months before the wedding, we went dress shopping. I found a beautiful lace gown. It was $3,000. It was the most expensive thing I had ever owned. My mom sat in the bridal boutique and sobbed. "You look like an angel," she whispered. "I wish my mother could have seen this. We've been through so much, haven't we? Just you and me against the world." She hugged me so tight I could smell her perfume. For a second, I actually felt loved. I felt like the money she borrowed was just a small price to pay for this connection. She told the shop owner, "My daughter is so successful. She's paying for this all by herself. I'm so proud." While I was in the fitting room, she used my phone, which I'd left on the velvet chair, to transfer $500 to herself for gas and groceries. I saw the notification later that night. I didn't even say anything. I was too tired. I wanted to keep the memory of her hugging me clean. I was paying for a version of her that didn't exist. By the time I hit 28, I was a ghost. I worked from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. I saw my fiancé, Mark, for maybe an hour a day. He begged me to slow down. "We can have a smaller wedding, Chelsea. You're killing yourself." "I just want it to be perfect, Mark," I told him, "just once." I was deposits away from the finish line, $24,500. It was all there. I looked at the number every night like it was a prayer. I had receipts for everything. $5,000 for the catering, $3,000 for the dress, $2,000 for the flowers. My mother would call me every day. "How's the fund?" "Honey, you almost there? You're such a hard worker. I told the ladies at church that my daughter's a machine." She wasn't cheering for me. She was scouting. She was watching the balance grow like a farmer watches a crop. She knew exactly when to harvest. She knew that because of that car accident 6 years ago, she still had the digital key to my life. She watched me come home with grease in my hair and coffee stains on my shirt. She watched me soak my feet in Epsom salt because I could barely walk. She watched me do all of that, and all she saw was a dollar sign. The last week of the pattern, she was extra sweet. She made me dinner once. She asked about the honeymoon. She asked if I was going to have a backup account just in case Mark and I ever had trouble. "I have the emergency account, Mom," I said, rubbing my eyes. "The one you're on, it's fine." "Good," she said, her eyes gleaming in the kitchen light. "It's always good to have a backup." I didn't know that while I was sleeping for 4 hours a night, she was on her iPad. She was looking at property in Florida. She was looking at limited time offers on timeshares. She was calculating how many years of my sweat it would take to buy her a vacation. She decided it would take all of them, every single one. I stood in the back of the Starbucks, the steam from the espresso machine hissing in my ears. The manager's words, "insufficient funds," were still echoing. My fingers felt numb as I tapped the screen of my phone, scrolling through the transaction history. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a glitch. 4 days ago, $5,000 transfer. 3 days ago, $10,000 transfer. 2 days ago, $9,499.88 transfer. The destination was always the same. Linda's savings! She hadn't even tried to hide it. She hadn't even left me enough to buy a sandwich. My thumb hovered over the final balance, $0.12. 12 cents was all I had to show for 3 years of working 20-hour days. My vision began to blur. My chest felt like it was being crushed by a vice. I could feel the heat rising in my neck, a deep, stinging red. My breath came in short, jagged gasps. I stepped into the employee bathroom and locked the door. I leaned over the sink and looked at myself in the cracked mirror. I looked old. I had dark circles under my eyes that no makeup could hide. I had sacrificed my health, my sleep, and my time with Mark for this. I pulled up my messages and texted my mother. My hands were shaking so hard I mistyped her name twice. "Mom, the wedding account is empty. $24,500 is gone. Did you see what happened?" I waited. I watched the little typing bubbles appear and disappear. My heart was thumping against my ribs like a trapped bird. Then, the ping. "I bought a timeshare in Florida," she wrote. "I found a beautiful place in Orlando. I deserve happiness too, Chelsea. I've spent my whole life sacrificing for you. You'll understand when you're a mother. You have a husband to take care of you now. It's my turn." Something inside me didn't just break, it went cold. It was like a light switch had been flipped in a dark room. The shaking stopped instantly. The tears dried up before they could even fall. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my phone. I didn't even reply. I stood up straight and wiped the water off the sink. For 28 years, and I had been the good daughter. I had been the victim. I had been the one who said, "It's okay," while she bled me dry. I deserve happiness too. The words felt like a slap. She thought she was entitled to my life because she gave me hers. She thought my marriage was her retirement plan. I realized in that moment that I didn't have a mother. I had a parasite, and if you want to get rid of a parasite, you don't beg it to leave. You make the environment so toxic it has no choice but to drop off. I walked out of that bathroom and told my manager I was sick. I wasn't sick. I was focused. For the first time in my life, I wasn't planning a wedding. I was planning a funeral for our relationship. I didn't go home to my apartment. I drove to a 24-hour FedEx office and sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. My mind was moving faster than it ever had during those 20-hour workdays. I needed a paper trail. I needed armor. When I walked inside, the cold air from the AC hit my face, waking me up. I sat at one of the rental computers and logged into my bank portal. I went back 6 years. I started with the day of the car accident. I watched the money move. I created a folder on a USB drive titled "The Cost of Linda." I downloaded every single statement. I highlighted the $500 graduation check. I highlighted the $2,000 for the fake surgery. And then I got to the last 4 days. I printed everything. The machine hummed and spat out page after page of evidence. Black ink on white paper. The numbers didn't lie. $24,500 moved in 4 separate transactions. I watched the printer tray fill up. Each sheet of paper felt like a brick I was using to build a wall between me and her. By 3 a.m., I had a 3-ring binder. I organized it by year. I even included the text message she sent me about the Florida timeshare. I took a screenshot of it, emailed it to myself, and printed it in color. The words "I deserve happiness too" looked even more disgusting in 12-point font. My next stop was my best friend Sarah's house. I had a key. I let myself in and sat on her couch until she woke up for work at 6 a.m. When she walked into the living room in her bathrobe and saw me sitting there with a binder and bloodshot eyes, she gasped. "Chelsea? What happened? Did something happen to Mark?" "Mark is fine," I said. My voice was flat. "My mother stole the wedding, Sarah. All of it, every penny." I handed her the binder. I watched her face as she flipped through the pages. I watched her eyes widen when she got to the 0.12 balance. "This is identity theft," she whispered. "Chelsea, this is a felony. You have to call the police right now." "Not yet," I said. "If I call the police now, she'll just play the victim. She'll tell the whole family I'm a cold-hearted daughter who is putting her mother in jail over a misunderstanding. I need everyone to see what she is before the handcuffs go on." "The bridal shower," Sarah realized. Her jaw dropped. "It's in 3 days." "Exactly," I said. "She's been bragging about how she's the supportive mother who helped me save. She's going to be there, wearing a new dress, drinking champagne that I probably paid for. I want her to have her moment. And then I'm going to take it away." Sarah looked at me with a mix of fear and respect. "What do you need me to do?" "I need your Bluetooth speaker," I said. "The big one. And I need you to help me make 22 copies of this binder." The next 2 days were a fever dream. I went to work like a zombie. I didn't answer my mother's calls. She left me 3 voicemails. In the first one, she sounded guilty. In the second one, she sounded angry. In the third one, she sounded like a saint. "Chelsea, honey," her voice crackled over my phone speaker. "I know you're upset, but you have to think about the big picture. Florida is an investment for the whole family. You can come visit whenever you want. Don't be selfish. I'll see you at the shower on Saturday. I bought the most beautiful dress. Love you." I saved that voicemail, and I added it to the digital file. I met with Mark that Friday night. He was devastated. He wanted to go to her house and scream. He wanted to demand the money back. "She doesn't have it, Mark," I told him, holding his hands. "She signed the contract for the timeshare. The money is gone. Even if she canceled it, we wouldn't see that cash for months. The wedding at the manor is over." Mark started to cry. "I'm so sorry, Chelsea. You worked so hard." "Don't be sorry," I said. I looked him in the eyes. I felt a surge of strength I didn't know I had. "We're still getting married. But first, I have to perform a surgery. I have to cut out a tumor." I spent Friday night at a Kinko's making the copies. I bought 22 gold folders. I wanted them to look like gift bags. I wanted them to look like part of the celebration. Inside each folder was the Cost of Linda packet. I also prepared the audio. I used an app to trim her voicemail and the voice notes she had sent me over the years when she was borrowing money. I edited them together into one 3-minute track. It started with her crying about her surgery and ended with her bragging about the Florida house. My heart was pounding, but it wasn't from fear. It was adrenaline. I felt like a soldier prepping for a mission. I checked my bag. Bluetooth speaker, charged. Phone with audio track, ready. 22 gold folders. My dignity. I didn't sleep at all on Friday night. I sat in my dark living room and watched the sun come up over the Chicago skyline. I thought about the Starbucks shifts. I thought about the smell of the diner. I thought about the 12 cents. I realized that for years, I'd been paying for a mother who didn't exist. I was paying for a lie. Today, the bill was finally due, and Linda didn't have enough in her account to pay for what was coming. At 11 a.m., I got dressed. I put on a simple white sundress. I did my makeup carefully to hide the exhaustion. I looked like a bride-to-be. I looked like a victim. I loaded the gold folders into the back of my car. Sarah pulled up in her driveway and honked. She looked at me and nodded. "Ready?" she asked. "Let's go," I said. As we drove to the restaurant where the shower was being held, I looked at my phone. A notification popped up from Facebook. My mother had checked in at the restaurant. "So excited to celebrate my beautiful daughter today. Being a mother is the greatest gift. Hashtag blessed hashtag bridal shower. Hashtag family first." I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in 3 days. It was the same smile she had given me after she stole my graduation money. Sharp, satisfied, final. "Enjoy the hashtags, Mom," I whispered to the empty car. "They're the last things you're ever going to post." The restaurant was one of those fancy places in downtown Chicago with floor-to-ceiling windows and white linen tablecloths. The air was thick with the scent of expensive lilies and perfume. I could hear the clinking of champagne glasses and the high-pitched chatter of 22 women before I even hit the door. I walked in carrying the box of gold folders. Sarah followed behind me with the large Bluetooth speaker hidden in a decorative gift bag. My mother, Linda, was right in the center of the room. She looked radiant. She was wearing a brand new, emerald green silk dress that probably cost $400. She had her hair professionally blown out. When she saw me, she let out a theatrical gasp and rushed over, her arms wide open. "There she is! The woman of the hour!" she cried out. She tried to hug me, but I stepped back using the box of folders as a shield. Her smile flickered for a second, but she didn't lose her cool. She turned to the room. "Isn't she beautiful? My daughter works so hard, you guys. She's my hero." My future mother-in-law, Diane, came over and squeezed my arm. "We are so proud of you, Chelsea. Linda was just telling us how you saved every penny for the manor. It's a dream come true." I looked at my mother. She was holding a glass of top-shelf champagne. She looked me dead in the eye and winked. She actually winked. She thought we were in on the secret together. She thought I was going to play along to save face. "Thank you, Diane," I said. My voice was calm. It was the kind of calm that comes right before a storm hits. "I actually have some special gifts for everyone. I wanted to do something a little different before we start the games." "Oh, gifts," my Aunt Susan chirped from the corner. "You're too sweet, Chelsea." I started walking around the table. I handed a gold folder to every woman in the room. I gave one to my cousins, my aunts, my future mother-in-law. And finally, I handed one to my mother. "What's this, honey?" Linda asked, frowning at the folder. "Is this the itinerary for the wedding weekend?" "Not exactly," I said. I walked to the head of the table. Sarah had already placed the speaker on a pedestal behind me. I pulled out my phone. "I want to talk about sacrifice." My mother always tells me that being a mother is about sacrifice. She tells me she deserves happiness because of everything she gave up for me. Linda stood up, her face turning a slightly lighter shade of green than her dress. "Chelsea, maybe we should do this later." "I worked 3 jobs for 3 years," I continued, over-talking her. The room went very quiet. The servers stopped moving. "I worked Starbucks at dawn. I did data entry all day. I served burgers until midnight. I did it because I wanted to start my life with Mark on solid ground. I saved $24,500. I saw Diane look down at her folder. She opened it. "But 2 weeks ago," I said, "that money disappeared. My wedding account went to 0. Actually, it went to 12 cents. A collective gasp rippled through the room. My mother's hand started to shake, the champagne sloshing against the side of her glass. "Chelsea, stop this. You're being dramatic. You're embarrassing yourself." "Am I?" I asked. I tapped the screen on my phone. The speaker roared to life. It was my mother's voice. It was the voicemail from 2 days ago. "I bought a timeshare in Florida. I deserve happiness too, Chelsea. You have a husband to take care of you now. It's my turn." Then, the audio cut to the recording from 2 years ago, the one where she cried about having a growth and needing $2,000 for surgery. I looked at my Aunt Susan. "In your folder, on page 4, you'll see the bank transfer for that surgery. And on page 5, you'll see the receipt for the designer handbag she bought the next day." The sound of 20 folders opening at once sounded like a deck of cards being shuffled. "You're a liar!" my mother screamed. She slammed her glass down on the table. The champagne spilled across the white linen like a stain. "I am your mother. I gave you life. You owe me everything." "I don't owe you my future, Linda," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. "On the last page, you'll see the transfers from this week. $24,500. Every cent I earned while my feet were bleeding. You spent it on a vacation home while I was picking out flowers for a wedding that is now canceled." "Canceled?" Diane whispered, her face pale. "The wedding is postponed," I told the room. For it's because my mother decided her tan was more important than my marriage. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the kind of silence that feels like it's vibrating. My mother looked around the room, searching for an ally. She looked at her sisters. She looked at her friends. Aunt Susan stood up. She was my mother's oldest sister. She walked over to Linda. She didn't say a word. She just reached down, took the emerald green folder out of Linda's hand, and looked at the bank statements. "Linda," Susan said. Her voice was trembling with rage. "You stole from your own child? It's a family investment," Linda shrieked. Her face was contorted, the mask of the supportive mother completely shattered. "She's a spoiled brat. She has everything. I have nothing." Aunt Susan didn't argue. Well, she simply took the half-full glass of champagne from the table and poured it slowly onto my mother's expensive new dress. "Get out," Susan said. "You can't tell me to leave. This is my daughter's shower." "It was her shower," Diane said, standing up to join Susan. "Now it's just a room full of women who know exactly what you are. Get out before I call the police myself." My mother looked at me. I expected to feel sad. I expected to feel that old guilt. But as I watched the green silk turn dark from the champagne, all I felt was peace. "The police are already on their way, Mom," I said. "I called them from the parking lot. I think identity theft is a little more serious than a misunderstanding, don't you?" Linda didn't wait for the sirens. She grabbed her purse and ran out of the restaurant, tripping over her heels as the entire room watched in total disgusted silence. I looked at the 21 women left at the table. "I'm sorry about the lunch," I said, "but I think we should all have a drink. I've been paying for them for years anyway." I didn't stay for the rest of the lunch. After my mother fled the restaurant, the energy in the room shifted from shock to a strange, quiet mourning. My aunts hugged me. My future mother-in-law, Diane, held my hands and told me that Mark was lucky to have someone as strong as me. But I didn't feel strong. I felt like a building that had been hollowed out by a fire. The shell was still standing, but everything inside was gone. I walked out of the restaurant and saw the blue and red lights of a police cruiser pulling into the lot. I met the officers by their car. I handed them a copy of the gold folder, the same one the women inside were still reading. "My name is Chelsea," I told the officer. "I'd like to report a theft, $24,000. That afternoon was spent at the precinct. I sat in a cold room with fluorescent lights and walked a detective through 6 years of bank statements. It's a strange thing to watch a stranger's face as they realize your own mother has been treating you like a piggy bank since you were 22. "You're sure you want to press charges?" the detective asked. "Once the ball starts rolling on grand larceny and identity theft, we can't just stop it because you have a change of heart." I looked at my hands. My fingernails were bitten down to the quick. I thought about the Starbucks shifts. I thought about the diner. I thought about the surgery handbag. "I had a change of heart 3 days ago," I said. "Press the charges." The fallout was like an earthquake. By that evening, my mother had been picked up at her house. The family investment she bragged about was actually a high-interest timeshare contract that she had signed using my social security number and a forged signature. Because it was fraud, the police were able to freeze the remaining funds immediately. But the damage to the family was even deeper. That night, the Facebook posts started. My mother used her one phone call to ask a friend to post on her behalf. "My daughter is choosing a man and a fancy party over her own flesh and blood. She's putting her mother in a cage because I wanted a place for us to vacation together. Disgraceful. Heartbroken. #family betrayal." In the past, posts like that would have sent me into a panic. I would have called her crying, begging for her to take it down. I would have offered her money just to make the public shaming stop. But this time, I just scrolled past it. I didn't have to defend myself. My Aunt Susan did it for me. She commented on the post with a photo of the 0.12 balance and wrote, "You didn't want a vacation for the family, Linda. You wanted a vacation from the truth. Leave Chelsea alone." 3 of her sisters blocked her that night. My cousin stopped answering her texts. The woman who spent her whole life complaining that I was closer to my dad's side finally got what she wanted. She was the center of attention. But it wasn't the kind she could use to buy a new dress. 6 months have passed since that day at the bridal shower. The Grand Oak Manor wedding didn't happen. We lost the deposit. We lost the date. For a few weeks, I stayed in bed, grieving the perfect day I had killed myself to afford. Mark stayed by my side every night. He brought me tea. He rubbed my feet. He reminded me that he wasn't marrying a bank account. He was marrying me. The bank was eventually able to recover $18,000 of the stolen money because the timeshare company didn't want to be involved in a criminal fraud case. It's not the full amount, but it's enough. We didn't book another manor. We didn't buy a $3,000 dress. Last month, Mark and I went down to City Hall. I wore a simple white dress I bought on sale for $40. We had 2 witnesses, Sarah and Aunt Susan. Afterwards, we went to the same greasy diner where I used to waitress until 11 p.m. We ate burgers and shared a milkshake. It was the best meal of my life. Linda is currently awaiting trial. Her lawyer tried to ask for a settlement, offering to pay me back over 10 years if I dropped the charges. I said, no, I don't want her money. I want her to understand that mother is a title you earn, not a license to steal. I'm in therapy now. My therapist told me something on Tuesday that stayed with me. She said, Chelsea, you weren't working 3 jobs to pay for a wedding. You were working 3 jobs to prove you were worth loving. You were trying to buy your mother's pride. She was right. And the moment I stopped paying, I realized I already had all the love I needed. My mother still sends me letters from her lawyer. She still tries to guilt-trip me through distant relatives. She tells people I chose a man over my own flesh and blood. I didn't choose a man. Son, I chose myself. I live in a small apartment now. I only work 1 job, the data entry one. It's boring, but it's 8 hours a day. I have weekends off. I have evenings with my husband. I have a bank account that only has 1 name on it. Sometimes when I'm checking my balance to pay the rent, I see that 12 cents in my mind. I remember the smell of the Starbucks at 5 a.m. and the feeling of my soul breaking. Then I look at my current balance. It's not $24,000. It's much less. But every single cent belongs to me. People think revenge is about a big explosion. They think it's about the Bluetooth speaker and the champagne in the face. And yeah, that felt good for a minute. But the real revenge is the silence. It's the fact that when my phone buzzes, I don't jump. It's the fact that I don't have to check the mail for lost checks. It's the fact that I can finally sleep for 8 hours without dreaming of dollar signs. So if you're out there working yourself to the bone for someone who only sees you as a wallet, let me ask you this. How much is your peace of soul actually worth? And if you had to choose between your money and your family, would you have the courage to pick yourself? I did. And for the first time in 28 years, I'm finally rich.